Hey everyone. I know it's been a long time since episode one, and honestly, I've had this one, episode two, finished for quite a long time, but I could not figure out if I really liked it or I really didn't like it from a production standpoint. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I really want to be putting out on this channel. I can definitely fall into the trap of getting very perfectionist with what I do. And there were several things, especially from a GM standpoint, and there were several moments in here where I really didn't know which direction to take the story, or what event to put up. And I was able to give myself enough things to move events forward. I think it starts rockier than it ends, and I definitely had fun during the whole thing. But it just I couldn't. There was just something not right with it for me. But there were a lot of things that were very right. I liked the NPCs that I came up with, and I liked the interactions that happened over the course of the story, or the episode. So I'm going with it. Things are going to be changing as we move along. I've changed my studio around a little bit, and I am going to be leaning a little more into the mythic. And you'll see me use Story Engine here. That's not going to go away. In fact, the next episode, I'm going to get into a little bit of world building. It's going to be more of a world building episode because I'm realizing that I really need to have a little more idea of what this corruption is that Shelby quit over. So in the next episode, it's going to be a mini episode, and we're going to go through using the Story Engine deck, the World Engine deck, and really talking about and putting the puzzle pieces into place. One, how the sector operates, how the assembly operates, which is the government of the Consortium, and all the little factors that will allow me to just sort of move more into sort of an autopilot mode, which is kind of the world that I'm used to being in. The plots, the events, the scenes are all going to continue to be extemporaneously created on the fly, but I need to have a better idea of what is happening in the galaxy, just for my own comfort level. So, unofficially, this episode is titled All the Warts, but officially it's episode 2 called The Errand. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next time. All right, welcome back to episode 2. Couple changes. Changed my main camera. It's a little difficult to control your smart lights when you're using your phone as your main camera. So I'm back to a camera that I'm very used to. I couldn't get it to work first episode. Kind of figured it out, sort of, for this one, and off we go. Couple housekeeping things. At the end of the last episode, Shelby kind of pulled it off there. So we're gonna lower the chaos level for Mythic GPT back to a 5, which is going to reset everything. Just getting myself set up. If you remember, if you remember the events of the last episode, Shelby had gone to a mechanic friend of his, Abel Hymera, who I almost said Jimenez, which would be just as good. But that's bad for me because I've created a name that's like another name, so I'm probably going to be swapping them out a lot. To try to get some help with his ship's AI. Not only for companionship, but for information that he believes the ship's AI has either access to or stored that will help him kind of make his case. I think although he's concerned about justice, I think that he really just wants to get back into the core, and for the reasons. Like he came into the ambassador corps for very altruistic reasons. So helping people, making connections, making sure nobody, everyone's swimming with their heads above water, that sort of thing. And when the corruption came in, I think it sort of colored his view of the entire organization. I think he just wants to get back to the reason he joined the corps in the first place. So that's sort of his motivation. I thought I had one more thing. I'm not sure. Oh, I did change around the sheet a little bit in the signature assets section. I was able to figure out how to wrangle Foundry to make the ship sort of one particular asset, which one will allow me to add assets in the future. But two, also, I've added this. It's in Cortex. They're called special effects. Basically,
you can view them as powers or abilities or something like that. But it's just basically to reflect that there is an AI on the ship and that currently it is disabled, just for record keeping purposes. I didn't yet change the distinctions around, but I am pretty. I want to actually do a couple of things. I think I'm going to pull the specializations out of roles and put them back into distinctions, which I think is where they go, because I'm not using there is a module or a mod in Cortex called skills that break out skills in a way that's very similar to any other role-playing system you may be used to. And so what I'm sort of doing with this roles thing, it's probably not breaking any rules, but I'm sort of doing a quasi both things that I don't necessarily want to do. I want to keep this as streamlined as possible. So anyway, he's visited Abel. Abel said, I can't help you, but I know someone who can. I need a name for that person. Just how I'm sort of approaching this, everything that as I'm talking is just coming out extemporaneously. I know some very basic things about kind of how things are organized and the organizations that are involved. But when it comes to names and particulars, that sort of thing, it's why I have the story engine stuff. That's why I'm using ChatGPT. It's to fill it in on the fly. But anytime that, like when, I was going back over in my edit and looking at episode 1, and Abel said, even talking about this could get my license pulled. That's just spur of the moment GM type stuff that I do all the time. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's a real pain because it's like, oh, I just introduced this thing, so now I've got to follow that up. I've got to support it, right? The idea. So there's nothing pre-written about this except for some very basic ideas about kind of the sector and how it's organized. I did want to bring up, because it may come up in this episode, the sort of the way that the Consortium handles justice is through an organizational system that's modeled after clergy, like specifically the Catholic Church. Hundreds, when people left the earth in this setting, the church became sort of a central function of society, not only from the standpoint of people looking for some kind of guidance, but that sort of morphed into being authority figures. And then hundreds of years later, the religion aspect of it sort of fell away, but the sort of hierarchical organizational systems stayed. So the nomenclature of the lawgivers, or whatever, just the whole justice apparatus of the Consortium is based very loosely on that hierarchy. Not necessarily the Pope, but starting with a bishop, which handles a particular region, which are called parishes, and then the actual sort of enforcement activities are handled by the priests. Sort of stolen from that movie Equilibrium, which I believe that's what those gun fu guys were called, priests. But just sort of, I don't remember. That's the only thing I remember about that movie. That and the choreography. But sort of extrapolating on that idea that's that there is not a religious component tied to it. I think, and we can let the randomness of this system sort of spring this out. I think that there are probably groups of people that have taken to worshiping like phenomena in the sector. And I have some idea on some of the phenomena, but whether it pertains to this story or not, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So Shelby has just sort of scared away that, there's more to talk about, of course. God, I hope all the episodes aren't like this. I did, and you may notice if you know Mythic and know Cortex and stuff, there are probably rolls that I kind of screwed up. Like specifically rolling on the fate chart. If we look at the chart itself, that's not it. Where is it? No. Oh, Adobe. Okay. If you look at the chart itself, if you just look at the 50-50 line, on the left side of that 50 is a 10, and on the right side is a 91. Rolling a 10 or less on a 50-50 roll is considered an exceptional yes, and rolling a 91 or above is considered an exceptional no. I know there was at least one roll that I rolled an 08. I can't remember what that roll was specifically, but that would have been an exceptional yes. It may have been an exceptional yes when I rolled for that rat rod to come through the jump gate. Could mean that one, he had more capabilities than I gave him credit for, or maybe he's got friends, or can call on friends, or is sitting back at the other jump gate, like waiting for that escort that never, Shelby claimed was coming, but never arrived. So just some interesting things there. I will try to slow down a little bit when I make rolls so that I can be a little more cognizant of what's going on. Also, when I make Cortex rolls, if I have a target number of 12, and I roll 5 pips, more than that, like if I roll a 17, that's considered a heroic success. And I think that'll play, I have to double check. I think it can play either way. And I know that there were times when I was rolling against a difficulty, not necessarily in a contest, where I failed by greater than 5. So I'll have to double check to see if that plays the other way as well. So I believe that's it. That's it, unless I think of something else. So, Shelby finishes the last episode with that line, you really would have liked that 1-6, and heads into the jump gate. It is approaching the jump gates and I still didn't print it off, but if a picture sort of a halo in the sky, and something actually very similar to the gate in Stargate. So it looks more like rippling water than anything else. The threshold between real space and the riverway. There is no physical sensation of traversing that threshold, but in one moment you're in real space, and the next you're traveling through a sort of a featureless tunnel-like system, I imagine to be similar to the hyperspace in Star Wars, kind of that twisting tunnel of light, basically. And then I did think about this as well. I think that there are systems on the ships that are able to travel through the riverway that allow you to query the gate you are going to prevent things like pirate ambushes if you're going to the Outlands, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that I want Shelby to. Wow, I rearranged my stream deck here, and I'm going to be getting used to that, I can tell. So I want him to actually use his system to query the gate to see if anything is waiting for him on the other side of the Outlands gate. So he's going to use his mental die, which is a D8. He's going to use technical. See, for this session, what I'm going to do is use both these dice. So technical is another D8, D10 for ship system, at least until I rip those specializations out, and then using the system on the ship is another D8. And the other thing I did for myself was clip a picture of the static difficulty. So I'm going to say that this is, I'm going to call it a 9, somewhere between easy and challenging. I also realized in episode 1 that the sound of dice rolling is really annoying. I mean, shaking in my hand is really annoying. So that technically did not beat the difficulty, which is interesting. Not sure how to play that. Well, we're going to say that there's momentary interference and give him another shot as he gets closer. But one of the things as he's traveling through this formlessness is the thought that 6 actually spoke when Abel, called out to him, and that really it was very surprising for Shelby because he has not heard 6 say anything since the Consortium text came in to, put those limitations on him. So he starts looking through the ship's systems, basically log files and the diagnostic parts without being invasive to what's going on within the AI. So he's going to look And for this, I am going to add the complication dice. And then the ship itself is going to, this is going to be another one of those days. So that's a 15 with a D12 effect die. Now, that's the best is a 13 and a D10. So no, he doesn't see any reason within the logs themselves that anything strange was happening there. As far as he's concerned, Abel was able to get 6 to respond, and no idea why. So what we're going to roll for right now is we're at a 50-50 in the chaos chart, and we're going to see if anything interesting or anything interrupts his journey. Of course, I rolled a 98, which actually is an emphatic no. Okay, that was it could have been interesting. So as he gets he does get closer to the gate of the Outlands, and is going to make another roll to query the gate that he's traveling towards, and that was at a 9. And no, we did not beat a 9. Oh, this is interesting too. This is another Cortex thing. So what happens, first of all, every session every character gets a plot point, so we're going to start there. Next, what happens is every time you roll a 1, it's called a hitch. And what the GM would do in a typical GM-led game is give a plot point for every hitch and then a complication of some kind. So for some reason, and the complications start at a D. You know what? I am going to look that up. So I rolled a couple 1s on my roll, which are hitches, and I get plot points for those, and a complication. And in this case, the complication is going to be that the chip systems have detected. No, wait, I've been query. I used that to query. So we're going to say that the sensors. Yeah, we're going to say that there is an issue with the sensors, or like an issue with the logic that controls the sensors. And because there are 2 1s on that roll, it's going to start as a D6 and then get promoted to a D8. It could be 2 D6 complications, but we're just going to promote the single one and make it a D8 complication. So the way these complications work, these are just for the session. So I'm going to say session sensor complication, which is going to give a D8 in opposition anytime that I try to use the ship sensors for the rest of this particular session, unless I go through the process of figuring that out and defeating that. So what does happen? The ship emerges from the warp gate into the Outlands. The Outlands, just from a visualization standpoint, looks like any other part of the sector. An empty bit of space with the warp gate behind the ship, and probably some like tender drones for the gate itself, just doing random maintenance. In the distance, there is a sun with not that you could see it visually, but it is known that there's at least one solar system out there with inhabited world and a couple different stations there, which is where he's heading. However, what does happen is, I'm going to go to our overhead here. We come out, we're going to turn this into the gate. I am going to make a gate. I want to see a gate on this table. I found a pretty good model for it too. And sitting there is, it's another ambassador ship and a fighter escort. The ship that he's looking at is actually a Mark 7. It's a ship that's one generation ahead of his. Typically, that's given to ambassadors that are further along in their career. Sometimes they're awarded to ambassadors that have performed some feat of professional expertise in the name of the consortium. And he recognizes this ship. The ship belongs to an ambassador named Arya, who at one point was trained by Shelby and then sort of stood in her own right as an ambassador and given her own sort of territory, a number of parishes to work with. However, she is also one of the people that Shelby approached when he started to uncover this evidence of corruption. And one, it started to try to understand her point of view, and two, to understand if she had seen anything similar. And he was resoundingly rejected on that idea. Not only had she claimed to have never come across any sign of this corruption, but that she was so rooted in her career and the path and trajectory at that time that she had no interest whatsoever in shaking that cage at all. So he sits back in his chair and just kind of looking at what's before him. The other two ships, one of the ships is a ship that he is not familiar with. This one. The markings are strange. The configuration of it is strange in a way that I wonder if this multicam actually sees everybody. That he is generally accustomed to. It could be a priest ship or even a bishop ship. He's not sure. It is decked out though with not only weaponry but some form of electronic, warfare. There are antennas and all sorts of strange protrusions that he is unfamiliar with. The communication system on his ship buzzes. He's being hailed. And he lets it go for a second and then activates it. The view screen pops, the hollow view screen pops up in front of him. And there is Arya. Arya is in her early 30s-ish. Very fit, short hair, brown, kind of very hazel brown eyes, light complexion. And she is sitting there in her command chair. Her ship is fully crewed and in a very formal uniform. Maybe not a uniform. It might be too much. Ambassadors are a little more hands-on. So all ambassadors wear some form of casual mix based on the parishes that they visit. We'll go with that. And she says, Citizen Shelby, how pleasant it is to meet your acquaintance once again. And the corners of his mouth curl up a little bit at that, being called citizen. She sort of put the emphasis on that as well. He says, Ambassador Arya, the pleasure is mine. What can I do for you? What a strange coincidence to have come across your august presence in the Outlands of all places. And she says, well, I was requested to meet your ship. I was not in the area, but close enough to arrive before you emerged from the riverway. It seems there were some irregularities in your last port of call. And we'll see if Shelby is going to give away anything on his face. He's not used to being interrogated. So we're going to go social with a 10. He is an ex-ambassador, so he's going to get that distinction. And he's going to pull in his political die. And actually, this is going to be her resistance, her number to beat, because she is the instigator of what's going on here. So I roll pretty well when I'm not rolling for myself. So her target number is going to be a 14, and that is a D10. I wonder if I could just live up there. There we go. So that's the target number, and that is effecti. She is going to be D8, D10, and a D8, I think. Yeah, nowhere close. Her best is an 11 with a D8 effecti. Also, an interesting part of the game, you don't have to choose your highest die to be your target dice if you'd rather your effect die be, the effect die is what they're going to be left with as a complication. So in this case, she has a D10 complication now, which means Shelby gets an extra D10 for any sort of social manipulation or interrogative type actions that she wants to perform right now, if that makes any sense. She lost the contest. The effect that she got hit with was a D10, so that D10 goes back to Shelby for the remainder of the scene. He's not shaken whatsoever, and he says, you'll have to be more specific. I've made several, stops on my way here. Need provisions. I did have to have the ship checked out for the journey. And she said, yes, that is what we are actually here about. It seems that your AI was activated and came online for a brief moment in response to interrogation by a Consortium engineer. Do you know anything about that? And Shelby allows the question to hang in the air for just a second. And he says, well, I did stop at a friend of mine, and I'm going to say Jimenez. I knew I was going to do it, but that's not it. His name is Chimera. I did stop at Abel Chimera's engineering, what do they call that? Engineering shop. That sounds so clumsy. And he did take a look at the ship. I don't know anything about him activating the AI. However, perhaps your engineers did not do a complete enough job. And she smiles at being put on her back foot a little bit at that. She says, well, the AI, as you know, is not removed from your ship, merely limited, so that you, as a retiree, may not have access to things that you would not normally have access to in the line of a day, let's say. And he says, oh yes, I'm aware. And she said, well, our investigation is not complete, but should we have any more questions, I assume that we can find you. And he said, I expect to be in the Outlands for the foreseeable future. And she said, how interesting. Very good. Meeting with anyone that I would know? And he said, well, it would be impossible to know that, wouldn't it? And she said, very well. I wish you a good day. And never forget, I am also your ambassador, citizen. And she cuts the feed, and just before his whole face falls, the thought of that, and her smarminess that just rankles his sense of better behavior, basically. The ships break away and actually travel back into the gate that he's just emerged from. He kind of leans into his console a little bit and he just shakes his head. He hopes that this is not going to turn into anything, bad for Abel, but he does send off a communication. They're too far away to communicate directly. There is no form of sort of subspace communication like in Star Trek, but he could send a message to the riverway, but because they had just entered the riverway, there would be a chance that could be intercepted. So he sends it by normal route, normal communication satellites bouncing around the speed of light. It would probably take a couple of hours to reach him. But speaking in code, basically, he gives some pleasantries and thank yous for his visit and speaks in a way that he understands, that he will let Abel know that he knows what's going on and to contact him basically if there are any issues. Okay, so what is going to happen, instead of him traveling all the way into the station that he's looking for, we are going to actually use the story engine to develop a bit of a plot for him. I want him to be contacted before he even kind of leaves that setting, that scene right outside the warp gate. So, all right, let me explain what we have here. So this is how the story engine works. We basically start with an agent card. Agent card's the sort of the instigator of, I think I can go multi-cam here. The instigator of whatever little subplot you're developing is. Now, I say subplot. You could use this to write an entire novel. The engine card is basically what the instigator of the plot wants to see happen. Anchor card is like a disc of like the object of the action, and the conflict card, which is what I had the most trouble with, are, you know, person A wants you to do this, but it's going to do this, this, and this, basically. And then there are aspect cards. Now you can use almost any combination of these. You know, it can be multiple people, it can be people acting, you know, against each other, and you're in the middle. You can do it almost, I mean, as many ways as you can imagine. So, what we have here is an arms dealer, and I pulled. It looks like I'm redeciding. I'm not. It's just there are different options on each card, and I can't remember because I just flipped them over. They're all flipped different ways. So an arms dealer who is immoral. There we go. Wants, no, that's not what it is. Wants to restore the former glory with the help of a holodisk. But they must cross a line they swore they would never cross. So that is our little subplot. What do you want, cat? Hi. Shelby is floating in space. Ari is just split with her escort. Wow, what's up, buddy? And as he begins to travel to the solar system and station he's looking for or heading towards, he is hailed. Very tight beam communication that is sent from the station he's actually traveling to. And he activates his communication system, and he said, "This is Shelby." And the voice on the other side is a woman, and she says, "Ex-Ambassador Shelby, your friend Abel told me about you. I know that you're heading to the station, but before you get here, I think that perhaps I can save you the trip. Because although I think I can help you," Abel explained somewhat what you're looking for, "I have something that I need completed first, as a little quid pro quo." She doesn't say that because it's terrible. She says, as a trade, do this for me, and I can do what I can to help you. And Shelby thinks about that for a second. He says, "Well, what did you have in mind?" She said, "I have a friend. His name is Damien, an arms dealer of some repute, some would say some infamy. Sold weapons on the wrong side of a small conflict in these parts. He is looking to regain some form of his former respect, and as part of doing so requires the recovery of a holodisk with some rather incriminating information." Shelby says, "Well, how can I help?" She says, "There is a gathering happening in 12 hours on a station not too far from here. It will require an invitation, which I can supply, and some credentials for your ship, but it should not be too difficult to implant. We need you to infiltrate the party, locate the holodisk, and retrieve it. Simple as that." And Shelby kind of closes his eyes. He imagines that his retired life is going to have a lot of this sort of thing in it. And he says, all right, I think this is his thought process. What I want is, I think, important enough. I think I can probably pull this off. He says, okay, agreed. Send me whatever information that you have, and I shall do my best. She says, very good. The holodisc emits a specific radiation signature, part of its manufacturing process. We have the frequencies that you would be looking for, and instructions on how you might use your sensors to locate it, at least to help narrow down your area that you will be searching. I was laughing because, of course, Shelby has a D8 complication for using any kind of sensors for the rest of this session, which is going to work very well with the way I've been rolling dice. He says, okay, all right, send me all the information. Is this a formal dress party? It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out. He starts to get information that is transmitted over an encrypted signal, and sees the particulars. The gathering is being held by what seems to be another local, maybe not local, but an arms dealer, and the invitee list are people he recognizes some of the names from some of his travels, but all of them have something to do with transporting, manufacture, the sale of large-scale arms, mostly to the Consortium, but occasionally to outside factions or interested parties, people in the Outlands, that sort of thing. He finds something very specific to wear, and then does a little bit of research on the area in the Outlands that he must travel to. So he is going to pick up his mental. Well, we're gonna see what his how difficult it is to find this information. So we're gonna say the information in the area would not be too bad. So that's 2d6 as sort of the standard, plus the d8 complication. I think that's good. So we are looking at a 10 and a d6 effect die, which is not going to be this is not a direct contest, so the complication process does not really figure into this, except for the complication that he's stuck with. So he's got, and that would have been, that's the 6 I added to that. So now he's going to roll mental. He's got his ship systems die and his technical die and the systems themselves. D8. So we are looking, there we go, 13 with a D8 effect die. No problem. Or the D10. Notice my inclination was to go with the D8 effect die because it had a 4 in it. But in Cortex, it doesn't matter when you're talking about effect die. It's just the number of sides. So if you do take, the highest dice in this case as your total, always pick the next highest die with the most number of faces as your effect die. Doesn't matter what number's on that dice. So he discovers that it is in a more, not that there is a touristy part of the Outlands, but there is a part of the Outlands that is more sort of outsider friendly, and it would make sense that that is where this gathering is going to take place, because it's going to involve people coming from outside the Outlands. It also means that he'll be able to go there, make, kind of find a place to stay that's close to this gathering point, which is being held, looks like, in a unaffiliated large sort of convention meeting space that is directly attached to, sort of a promenade of expensive food places like restaurants and other activities that, you know, some people of that stature would be accustomed to when they were going to something like this. Very, you know, night spot heavy sort of a deal. So he travels to this. It's only a couple hours away from where he is, and does make port, and kind of is able to find a place. Well, let's actually look at the mythic chart for this. So we're still at a 4, and we're looking for, it's a 65% chance that he's going to find an ideal place to park his ship that is within its own sensor range. And of course not, that's a 95. So he is a little farther away, which is going to make sense for the complication that he already has on his ship's sensors. But the place he does find is not, you know, it's fine. It's not ideal from the standpoint of trying to locate him a specific, you know, signature on a hollow disk, but he is going to try to do that before he gets ready for this deal. So there's a D8 and right now I'm going to roll the complication, the target number for that. So there is a D8 complication, and we're going to call this challenging from where he's at, which is 2D8. Oh, not bad. So the best it can do is a 9 with a D8 or D8 effect die. He may be able to do something with that. So I should just, this is the roll he makes all the time, so I should probably just have this set aside. So it's a D8, a D8 and a D10, and the ship systems is another D8. All right, no problem. 16 with a D8 effect die. So yeah, from his ship, as he's getting ready and the ship finishes its scan of the area looking for this particular frequency, if probably if it had been you know, like a needle in a stack of needles situation, it would probably be much more difficult. But because the particular manufacturing signature is on this disk in the Outlands that is not known for having this signature, he's able to pretty much pinpoint it. There is a set of offices that sits above what looks like a ballroom of some kind, and within that office he can very clearly see that the signature is emanating from there. It's not good enough that he's able to, like, what stack of paper is it in, that kind of thing, but he does know sort of where it is. His ship had been implanted with a signature itself as kind of how he was able to get into this area. But he does see that as he's stepping off the ship and traveling down the promenade to this very large building that is part of a large system of stations that has its own environment. So it is the type of thing where you can look down along the promenade out into space and see the protective dome of a shield that travels not only for as far back as you can see, but in front of you and around you. Enormous, on a scale that would be unimaginable today. The building itself is huge, like Australia Opera House huge, done up in a very Art Deco, kind of Gotham City kind of way, very grand and dramatic architecture, sweeping concrete pillars and arcs that rise above him. And the area is very tightly controlled. Everyone's invitations are being checked blocks away from this building. Ships have gone through a check as they come in, and his credentials seem legitimate. Let's see if anyone recognizes him. He's fairly well known, or was well known as an ambassador, but of course they do with a 0-1. He is approached by. No, he's not approached. He's in the process of passing through one of the checkpoints, and they're basically scanning people's data pads or, their wrist identification, that sort of thing. And he just passes by a checkpoint, passes a couple speaking to another couple, everyone holding drinks of some frothy sci-fi flavor. And as he passes through the checkpoint, one of the women of one of those couples sees him out of the corner of her eye, and then with a very confused look turns as he sort of walks behind her, and she says, "Carol?" And he stops. Very few people know or use his first name, but he does recognize the voice and slowly turns and says, "Emily, how surprising to see you here." She says, "Yes, I thought that this would be persona non grata for someone of your position." He comes to the realization very quickly. She does not realize that he has left the Corps. And he says, "Well, official business at times." And he says, "I'm sorry, that sounds terribly lame and inhospitable, but..." She says, "I completely understand. But let's see if that bluff has gotten past her." So I'm deciding a relationship that they're on a first name basis. Probably means that they're not close but friendly. And for anyone that caught that his name is Carroll Shelby, who invented the Mustang. That's where I stole that name from. So anyway, she is rolling. His difficulty is a couple d6s and her social stat, which is a d10. And she rolled like I've been rolling pretty much this whole game. So his target number is a 5 with a d10 complication. And he's making a social roll with a d10. He is an ambassador die, which is a d8. His political die and a persuasion die. And looking to roll better than a 5. Yeah, no problem. She says, "Oh, I understand. I won't keep you. What a pleasure to see you. I am staying," and she gives a location of a hotel. "Perhaps we can meet up later for a drink." And he says, "That might be very interesting." And they exchange information, and he continues on his way. He gets into the main building, and it's huge. Whoever is throwing this is spending quite a lot of money, not only on the security, but the accommodations for even the food cost alone would be astronomical. And he doesn't spend a lot of time glad handing, but enough time trying to be pleasant but forgettable for him to sort of sidle up to an area of this enormous cavernous building that, what was that? That he's able to just sort of sneak away. So we're going to make a roll for him. He's going to do, and this one we're just going to say is static. So I'm sorry, it's a D10, D8, D6, D8, D6, and a D8 for the ambassador. We're going to call this easy at a 7, static 7. Okay, no problem. Look at all these great rolls. So he does get through the crowds, and there are booths of vendors and people that are sort of hawking their wares, and it all seems sort of very familiar to him in a professional sense. He's been to not something like this, but to gatherings like this, ambassadors going to conventions and gatherings of people for training and that sort of thing. And he was able to fairly easily break away and heads up a long set of stairs. He's avoiding any mass people mover, no whatever the equivalent of elevator or escalator is. He's going for stairs, which he feels would be a little more secluded. We're going to see if there's anyone standing on the stairs. Things have been going his way here, so I expect that we're still at a 35 and less for a yes, and of course there is. Is it a? We're gonna ask if it is some form of security. And it absolutely is. And that's an 03. And we're gonna check. We're gonna check our chart here, but we're at a KS level. Oops, I'm trying to click on the OBS. We're at a KS level 4, and we rolled an 03. So yes, that's very much yes, or whatever they call it, exceptional yes. And from my standpoint, an exceptional yes is going to mean that it is probably 2 guards standing in front of the door that he is trying to get through. So what is he going to do? I don't know, this is the kind of situation he's going to be able to bluff. Let's say, I'm going to say, does he have anything? Probably not. It's probably very unlikely that, oh, actually I was just rolling on the 50-50 thing. But that's okay. We're at a KS level 4. Oh, and that's how I could have done the other roll. I don't remember how I reversed that roll. I didn't have to do that. All I had to do was say something was very likely and move down this way. So we're going to say it's probably pretty, I'm going to call it very unlikely that he would have anything knockout gas typey that would help him out here. At a 15%, no, because that's a 40. I mean, he's got the social skills. I just don't know how realistic it is that he just bluff his way through this door. Well, he's a man of the people, so I could spend some plot points here. I have 3 of them. All right, so I do have a man of the people special effect or distinction. So I can spend a plot point to step up social test die when persuading or aiding consortium citizens. Although he's, well, we're going to see. I think it's likely that these guys are consortium. We're at a KS 4, which is a 55. Yeah, these guys are both consortium citizens. So yeah, he's going to spend a plot point. And I think his initial test here. Now this is a contest, and this, you're going to see how contests work. A contest is equivalent to a fight in D&D, except a contest in Cortex Prime can be anything. It can be social, it can be combat, it can be anything that involves I want something and you're going to resist what I want. So complications are involved. The whole thing. This is the whole thing. Okay. So he is at first, his big move at first is just going to he's going to act like, look, that's where I belong. I'm going to go through that door. So he spent his plot point. So I'm going to step up. He's got a D10 social. So I'm going to step that up to a D12. He has a man of the people, which is a D8. He's going to be doing his political thing and persuading, which is another D8. That's it. So he's acting. So he's going to be the one setting the difficulty for the guards to kind of figure that out. Okay, I thought that was going to be terrible. It's only not as, it's nearly disappointing. Where is it? So we're going to go with the 13. I can see the 10, but not the 3. Okay, whatever. It's a 13. And we're going to take a D8 as our deal. So we're going to say, we're going to start this at challenging, which is a D8. So we're going to roll 2 D8, and then we're going to go, each one of the guards is probably, I'm going to say they're okay at their job. So really I want another D8. I don't want to mess up my colors. Well, I'll just roll one of my blue ones. Okay. So it's a 13 and a D8. And this is 4 D8. Wow. Well, it's role playing, right? And it would never work in the modern day, but here we go. Although I guess, okay, it doesn't have to stop here. So, okay, so this is basically how this goes, and I want to do this because I want you guys to see a full contest. Now I've won the roll, but our effect dice are the same because all they have are D8s, which means that although they lost this roll, and they'll take a complication for that, which is a D8, my effect die. Because the effect dies are the same, they can't be taken out of the scene. So they're still kind of in the fight. So now they are going to, Shelby begins to approach, and they look at each other confused. He's walking like someone that knows where he's at and knows that he belongs in that room. And one of them says, wait, sir. Shelby is going to take a D8 from their complication. I'm going to have to mark this. They hold up their hands, and Shelby looks down at his hand with a look on his face that he's had to muster several times in his career, and says, son, I don't think you know who you're talking to. So he's got that added D8 in there now for their complication. Ooh, that's a pretty good roll. So that is a 16, which they can't beat. And they still get their 4 D8s. 4 D8. Oh, that's a 16 and a D8. I wish I could use that D12 for a complication. But they failed to roll. Well, they did last time. So that's technically another D8 I get. They rolled a 15, and the best they can do is a D8. And they realize that they're on the losing end of this exchange, and they say, sorry, sir, can we at least see some identification? Man, I really wish he was kitted out to throw some knockout gas or something at this moment. What he's going to do is I'm going to spend another plot point to turn one of these D8s into a D10. And maybe I can get an effect die. And they also give me another D8. And he says, I understand you must be new. That's so gross. He says, look, I forgot something in my office, and I will only be a moment. Please watch the hallway. All right, so we got a 15 in there. That's good. We have a 15 and a D12 effect die. Which they lose, and because they don't, they can't beat my effect die, they're taken out. which means in this case, they lose the contest. They're uneasy about it, but they kind of look and shrug. All right, just be quick, sir, please. And he says, you don't have to ask me twice. So he gets into the office. It is a temporary office, so it's, you know, it's very kind of sparsely decorated, and there are mostly just storage cases there from a couple of the vendors that had preferential treatment. He begins looking through some of the cases. So he's going to roll a mental. He's going to say navigate the maze using one of his distinctions. And it's actually going to spend a plot point to grab. What that does is give him a D6 asset. So we're going to say that he's calibrated his data pad for this signature, and he's able to use it in this particular circumstance, which I'm going to give him a D8 for technical because he's using the data pad. And that's it. We're going to roll a 2D6 plus a D8 just because there's stuff. So we're looking at 11 with a D8. Oh, thank you. And a 13. So he's able to fairly quickly locate the right case. He pops it open, and there's several different holodisks. And just glancing at some of the stuff that's kind of scribbled on them, he realizes quickly these are probably things that are very sensitive should they get out. Things that might be used to blackmail certain people. But he finds the one he's looking for, he stays away from the other ones, slams the door shut, throws it into his robes, and gets out of the office. Nods to his security on the way out. Thank you. See to it this room stays completely secure. Yes, sir. He heads back down into the crowd and is almost surprised that he's able to leave this area without being molested in some way. But we'll see. Is Emily standing on the edge of this group? We're going to say somewhat likely. So that is a 50-50. No, she's nowhere to be seen. He has her information if he wants to light that fuse. But he is able to leave, gets back to his ship, and at that moment he's sitting back in his captain's chair and just thinking about the events of the last 12 hours or so. And just lets himself kind of relax as the experiences kind of wash over him. A lot's happened to him since he's dropped out of the Corps. And he has a feeling that things are about to get really interesting. That's where we're going to stop, episode 2. This was a longer one, I think. Yeah, a longer one. I thank you for coming along on the journey with me. It was interesting going into this one from a solo role-playing standpoint, because the only thing I knew was that I knew he was going to try to look through the log files, because that kind of struck me in the shower. It's like, wait, he would wonder. He would wonder about that. And that's what I'm trying to stay true to what the character would want to do, which I think is important in solo role-playing, is to try to stay true to the situation. You know, if you start fudging things, or especially giving them knowledge, you know, just like in any role-playing game, if you're passing your player knowledge into your character, you know, you're just going to not have as good a time. So it's, you know, I think the failures in role-playing are a lot more interesting than the successes, and especially here, because you know, it truly is the events that push him in a different direction. I had something for if he had discovered, you know, what, like in the log files, why 6 talked to Abel that one time. You know, I had something for that, but I didn't have anything for. I didn't even know Maya's name, like the person that gave him this little side quest. You know, I asked ChatGPT to give me 10 names of human names. So Maya came from that. I knew that that's who he was going to go see, But I only knew that today when I pulled up those names. Even when Abel said, go see the person, blah, 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 I didn't even know who that was. So, and then the story engine gave us the side quest, right? So, I think I'm gonna lean a little more into the story engine cards, because I liked how that turned out, and because it felt like I had a direction, which I think is probably something that a lot of solo RPGers probably wrestle with quite a bit. The idea that, even with Mythic, which is pretty good, it has a pretty good like random event system. You don't want everything you do to be part of some random event. You want it to feel like, if you're running a campaign, that it all has an arc, right? That there's a goal that you're working towards in some way. Even for something like this, which is a little side quest, is going to pull Shelby back into kind of the main thread so that he can continue pushing that story forward. So again, thanks for joining. I hope you had a good time. I'm having a really good time doing this. And so we'll see you next time. Not sure.